Right, so we're now ready to start with an exam type question. So hopefully you guys have your calculator in front of you. You're going to work with me. A huge thank you to our sponsors, Liberty. And guys, once again, a reminder, if you did not download the Tenfold education app, you need to do that as soon as possible. Right, so I think let's get started. Let's now look at a question on cash budgets. So I'm going to go through the information first, and then we obviously will look at the specific questions. So we are provided with information relating to West Stores owned by Mr. Johnson. So the information that I have, very briefly, guys, I'm not going to read through every bit of information at this stage. We'll obviously look at them in much more detail as we tackle the questions. So the first bit of information in front of me is sales, and I notice they're giving me the sales for Jan, February, and the month of March. And as you can see, there's actual as well as budgeted, and sales has been split into cash sales as well as credit sales. So obviously January, February, that has happened, and we're now trying to forecast what we expect to happen in the month of March. Right, then they go about telling me how credit sales are collected. So again, we'll get to that later on. Second bit of information, every month the owner withdraws cash and stock. So immediately this bit of information is in terms of drawings. Information number 3 deals with purchase of trading stock. Okay, and obviously they talk about the stock purchased for the month of January, February, and March, and they're giving me total purchase. So unlike sales, they haven't split this into cash and credit. Right, next bit of information still deals with stock, and we'll obviously tackle that later on. Information 4, interest on fixed deposit. I don't really want to read further. Information 5, operating expenses. That's fine. Then I've got information 6 that deals with salaries for the month. Information 7 tells me about rent income. Information 8 talks about fixed assets. I see there's a bit about depreciation. Then there's something about additional vehicle purchase. So we'll obviously look at that later on as we're doing the questions. Then information number 9 talks about the owner and additional capital that the owner is going to contribute. Information 10, the balance of the bank account on the 28th of Feb. And then finally, the last bit of information, as you can see, deals with an asset that is going to be sold. So the business plans to sell one of its computers for cash. Right, so we've got some field for the info that's in front of us. Now let's tackle the actual questions, and obviously this is when we're going to look at the information in more detail. So the very first question, calculate the amount expected to collect from debtors for the month of March 2020. Now remember guys what I explained earlier on. You sell on credit, and that is only converted into cash when you receive payments from your debtors. So that is what we're now trying to establish. How much will we receive or collect from our debtors for the month of March? Right, so we're going to go back to our info, and we're going to start with the month of January. So in January, my credit sales is 75,200. So I just want to take that through. So the month of January, my credit sales, 75,200. I sell on credit in January. And now let's see how payment takes place. So credit sales are collected as follows. 50% pay in the month of sale, and they get a 5% discount. So remember, if I'm selling in the month of January, which we're now looking at, 50% of my debtors will pay in January. So clearly my cash budget is for the month of March. So that 50%, okay, that 50%, I actually do not want the 50%, and I'm actually going to erase that. So that 50% is not part of my budget, and I don't want the 50%. Right, let's go back to the way my debtors pay. So 50% sorted. Let's now look at the rest. 30% pay after 30 days. So again, you sell in January. 30% of my debtors will pay 1 month later after 30 days, which is clearly the month of February. So once again, if you look at your cash budget, it is for the month of March, and that 30%, I do not want the 30% because I'm trying to establish what will I receive in March. So that 30%, I rather write it here, I don't want the 30%. Right, then, once again, selling in January, 15% will pay after 60 days, in other words, after 2 months. So 15% will now pay in the month of March, after 2 months. And remember, my cash budget is for March, and obviously I do want the 15%. You guys with me? I'm trying to establish what I will receive in the month of March. So let's get our calculator out. Let's just clear that up. So credit sales, 75,200 times 15%, and we will receive 11,280 Rand in the month of March. So 11,280. Okay, as you can see, guys, not difficult. Right, let's now move on to the next month, which is the month of February. So if I go back to my information, in February, I plan on selling on credit, or rather it happened already because this is actual information. So that amount, 50,400. So let's take that through. So February's credit sales, 50,400. Right, so once again, let's go back to how our debtors pay. So remember, 50% will pay in February. And remember, I'm drawing up a budget for March. So obviously that 50%, okay, that 50% I do not want because I'll receive that in February. Right, if I read further, 30% will pay after 30 days. So again, I'm selling in Feb. 30% will pay in March. And obviously March is what I'm trying to calculate. So I do need the 30%. Okay, so let's go back to our answer sheet. Times 30. And in March, I'm expecting to receive, so you guys work with me as well, 50,400 times 30%, and I'm expecting to receive an amount of 15,120. So let's fill that in, 15,120. Right, what would happen to the balance? So let's just quickly go back. The balance, 15%, will be paid after 60 days, in other words, after 2 months. So remember, if I'm selling in Feb, 15% will be received in April. So obviously, this question only wants me to calculate what I'm receiving in March, so I actually don't need that 15%. Okay, you guys with me? Right, and then very important, something that I left out, you would have noticed I completely ignored the 5%, the balance, which is written off as bad debt. And remember, the reason for that is this item is an expense. Obviously, it is not a payment of cash. So it's a non-cash item, which I do not need if I'm doing a cash budget. Okay. Right, so the month of February sorted. The final month to look at now is the month of March. So in the month of March, my credit sales 78,400, and remember this hasn't happened as yet. So I plan on selling on credit in March. Okay, my credit sales 78,400. Let's just quickly check that is correct. Yeah, it is. Right, and now let's look at how I am going to receive payment. So remember, now I'm selling in March. So if I'm selling in March, 50% of my debtors will pay me in the month of March. And clearly, I want that 50%. However, a 5% discount is also allowed. So because my debtors 50% will pay me on time, I need to give them some kind of reward. So the reward that I'm giving them is that discount. Now remember, that discount is obviously going to reduce the amount of money I am going to receive. So if you look at your calculation, let's just quickly change the color of our pen there. So our credit sales, 78,400. We're going to obviously receive 50% in March, but remember, we're not going to receive the entire amount because we are allowing that 5% discount. So we are only going to receive 100 minus the 5%. In other words, only 95% of that amount. Okay, so guys, this is important. Just make sure that you multiply by 95%. So let's just put that calculation through. So times 50% times 95% because of that discount and the amount that we are expecting to receive. So 78,400 times 50% times 95%, and we are expecting to receive an amount of 37,240. So 37,240 is what we expect to receive. Right, are we going to worry about the other months? No, because remember, you are selling on credit in March. You will then receive payments also for the month of April as well as the month of May. But remember, once again, I'm reminding you guys, we're only focusing on the budgeted period, which is the month of March. So I'm assuming this would have been 2 marks each. And what's left for me to do is simply total. So in total, how much do I expect to receive in March? So if we quickly add up, so plus 15,120 plus the 11,280, and the total that you're expecting to receive from your debtors, an amount of 63,640, and that would have been your 7th mark as far as this question is concerned. Right, let's now move on to question 1.2. Calculate the amount expected to be paid to creditors for the month of March 2020. So how much are we planning to pay our creditors? So let's now look at the information that we did not read in too much of detail earlier on. Now's the time for us to obviously read through this info. So your purchase of trading stock. So in January, total purchase 67,000. Month of February, 45,000. In March, 25,000. And then further information, the business maintains stock at a fixed level. That's fine. Doesn't really affect my cash budget too much. 25% of the purchases are for cash. Okay. And the remainder is on credit. So remember guys, the remaining percentage that's on credit is obviously 75%. That is on credit. Creditors are paid 1 month after the purchase of stock. So remember, what I buy in January, I'll pay 1 month later, which is in February. What I buy in February, I will pay 1 month later, which is in March. What I buy in March, I pay 1 month later, which is obviously the month of April. Right, as far as the question is concerned, calculate the amount that you are expected to pay your creditors for the month of March. So going back to what I said earlier, remember I pay them 1 month later. So in other words, what I buy on credit in Feb is what I end up paying in March. So in February, total purchases is 45,000. But remember, I need to calculate how much I bought on credit, because that's what I will pay my creditors, what I bought on credit. So on credit is 75%. So the amount that you would have purchased on credit in terms of stock, so let's clear that, 45,000 times 75%, and that gives us an amount of 33,750. Okay, so that is the amount that I would pay in March. So it's obviously the amount from Feb. I'm just quickly repeating my calculation. So 45,000 times 75%, and the amount I would pay my creditors, 33,750. So let's just fill that in, 33,750, and that would have given you 2 marks. Okay, so as you can see, guys, not difficult. The key is don't make an error while doing your calculations, because often cash budgets, students love cash budgets, and it's very easy to get full marks as far as these questions are concerned. Right, then the next question, prepare the cash budget. Now remember, in grade 12, you probably won't be asked to prepare an entire cash budget. So what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on some of the calculations. So we may not end up preparing the entire cash budget, but rather let's look at the calculations so that you know how to calculate the various amounts that goes into a cash budget.